Well, I was able to work at real estate full time. So that's the key, is that you can't do this as a side gig. You can't do it on nights and weekends. You can't do it in the summer as a school teacher. Like, you really have to dive in and just do it full time. And once I realized that that's what I needed to do, is to shift my attention. I've always had multiple jobs at a time. Even in college, I paid my way through college, working as a bev cart girl, bartending, waitressing, all the things, cleaning houses. I mean, anything I could do to just graduate with zero debt, I was doing it. And then I owned a photography business and was a wedding photographer for 10 years while I was at the orthodontic office. So I've always just liked to do multiple things. And that breakthrough year in 2021, which was my first full time, is no other job. I was like, oh, okay, if I can focus on one thing and just do that one entity that I love, and it captures all my time and attention, then I think I can just power.
Welcome to the WillPower podcast, where we uncover the secrets of success and share the wisdom of exceptional individuals. I'm your host, William Gomez, and as a real estate professional, I bring you insights from the world of real estate and beyond. Join me as I engage in captivating conversations with incredible guests from diverse backgrounds and industries, from top real estate moguls to trailblazing entrepreneurs and influencers. We dive into the mindsets and habits of successful people. If you love what you hear, don't forget to rate and review. Get ready to be inspired, motivated, and enlightened. Live life today on WillPower. Rachel Close, thank you so much for coming on. I am super glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome. This is fun.
Of course. I know that you, we've had some great conversations. I'm super impressed by your business. You're a real estate agent, top producing real estate agent that has only been doing real estate really for 3 years, right?
Full-time
3 years. Before that,
6.
You were worked at as an orthodontist office for about 12 years, and then came on to this crazy business that we love to call real estate on either side, whichever side you're on, and you've been killing it. Last year, you did 50 units for almost $15 million. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
As a solo agent.
As a solo agent. So for anybody listening to get some perspective, in our area, in the Tulsa MLS, how would you describe, so I would say it's like one half of Oklahoma, would you say? Because the other MLS is like Oklahoma City and... Yeah,
the jurisdiction, I don't know the exact boundaries, but somewhere like in the Henrietta area, GTAR runs the MLS, GTAR, Tulsa area is probably MLS, and then Grand Lake has their own, and then that widespread between. And then
there's some people that if you pay money, you can be part of that MLS as well, right? Because I noticed that there's some people that from Oklahoma City, not all of them, but there's some people that are in the Tulsa MLS. Well, there's over 6,000 agents in that list. Only 4,700 and some change did at least one deal last year. Mm-hmm. And out of those 4,700, I kid you not, like 3,900 of them only did one deal.
Mm-hmm.
So you doing 50 units on your third year for whatever amount of volume, because that's kind of where I'm super impressed by units, because I've been to a lot of different, conferences and masterminds around the nation, and you'll talk to somebody and they're like, yeah, I did 50 million last year, but I closed 15 transactions, right? And it's like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And we've had conversations about that, but so I am super excited to have you on and just kind of
thank you.
And get into your mind of what got you to be to where you're at, because this is why. If anybody has an excuse not to be where you're at, it's you. And so first of all, what got you wanting to be in real estate to begin with?
Great question. And I don't really share my numbers to just be like, oh, go me. I'm very slow to share them, because I feel like I don't do it for the publicity and for the numbers and for the hurrahs about that. I think it gives perspective for people who are getting into the business or who have goals to say they can be accomplished, they can be done, because everyone has trials, tribulations, and adversity that they face. So I really got my license. I went to a night class with the Olivers, a family I've known for a while. And I thought, this sounds fun. I'll just get it and kind of do it on the side. Well, as we all know, it's laughable. You can't do real estate part-time, or you're never going to, be successful and be able to serve your clients, which is really why I do it, is to serve the clients and the families. But I was working at the orthodontic office. I love orthodontics. I love dentistry. I was really passionate about that. I loved who I worked for. It was just a family unit. You spend a lot of hours with, your work family. But as a mom of 5, I was not able to keep up with working, as you call it, an 8 to 5. I couldn't take them to school, couldn't attend a lot of their functions when you work in patient care. So this gave me a little bit of an outlet to say, okay, well, I'll just see where this goes. And my husband flips houses and works in the kind of the contractor world. And once I got my license and started selling a couple houses, I'm like, this is fun. Like, I really love it. But you hit a threshold where you just physically can't do it all. And so March of 2020, the day before the world shut down, I quit my stable paycheck job and sold my car and drove my grandma's 25-year-old Honda Odyssey minivan and drove it till it died to say, okay, I'm gonna make this work, and never looked back.
And how many houses had you sold by that time?
Oh, like 2 maybe, and one was to my mom.
2, and one of them was to your mom.
Yeah.
So you said that you're like, I don't share my numbers to boast, and I know that. But here's the thing: is we live in a world where everybody's like an expert online or whatever podcast you're listening to. So people, want to see some credibility, right?
Sure.
So, and then the perspective gives even more credibility there. But what I love is that now that people know where you're currently at, it's so hard to see somebody like yourself or like any other top producer be like, well, they were there at one point. Like, let's say I'm a new agent and I've been licensed for 6 months and I've only closed 1 deal. That's actually not bad. If I've been licensed for 6 months and I've closed 1 deal, but you get in your head and you're like, oh my gosh, is this for me? Like, I took Rachel out to coffee, to kind of pick her brain. And, she closed 50 deals last year, and I just don't know if I'll ever be able to touch that. But people forget that everyone always has had a start. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you have that could be a great excuse is that you have 5 kids.
Yes.
One of the things that I love about having my first child now is that people can't say, well, you're doing what you do because you don't have any kids, whether it's like in business or workout or whatever it is. Of course you can wake up at 5 a.m. and go work out because you don't have any kids. Well, now I have a kid and now I have to wake up 30 minutes earlier, right? So, but out of those 5 kids, only 3 of them are biological. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about that story, because I know you shared this with me, and that I found that to be like just incredible. I mean, if that doesn't show you the type of person that you are, you and your husband, and if that doesn't show you how adaptable you are, which that's a huge key in this business and life, but also adapting while something hard is happening. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So 2012, about 12 years ago, my husband, and we're very open about this, we share it because we feel like it will help other people that may be going through this or will go through it. It's not something you necessarily choose. Life is hard. And some people turn to drugs or other coping mechanisms. And as we know, if you've had family members or friends involved in stuff like that, it's really challenging, and it's hard once you have an addict that it's, almost virtually impossible to come out on the other side of that. So in October 2012, my husband's brother passed away. And the mom wasn't really in the picture and not able to care for the 2 children. So our 2 nephews, Jackson and Reed, they were 3 and 5 at the time, had come from a drug house and very, very, you name it, they had it. Cavities, lice, no clothes. I mean, just basically scraping by. They came to us with a backpack, a spoon in it, and their dad's T-shirt on their back, literally. So we just swooped in, tried to help them as best as we could, tried to rehab the mom to get them to go back to her, because that's always the best possible case, is to put children back with their, biological parent. fast forward, that didn't happen. And so after we spent a year rehabbing them and getting them well and healthy and had a community of people around us, our CrossFit gym gave us, bedding, and my boss I was working for, the orthodontist at the time, gave us car seats and toothbrushes and every essential we could think about. And, we just spent that whole year thinking we got to, help these children or else they're going to end up either in, the system or something worse. So all while doing that, we were 5 months pregnant with our first child. And it's not something that my husband and I were like, I'm going to sign myself up for this because it's challenging. It's hard. And you're working full time and you're pregnant with your first child and you don't know how to parent people. And it was a lot to say. Looking back on it now, I'm so thankful that we were in a position where we could help them. But we never looked behind us and we just kept trucking forward, ended up adopting them. We had an amazing attorney that worked with us to, do all the legalities behind it. And fast forward, had another kid 4 years later, and then just had our last in December of 2020. So when I was starting out in real estate full time, I just found out I was pregnant with our last child. So it's 0 to 3 and then now 5.
And I thought you were going to leave that part out. I was just like waiting for it. I was like, you were pregnant. Like yeah. I
kind of forget about it.
Like I'm trying to picture like the 9 months, and of course I didn't carry the baby, but like it was just kind of like it was daunting for me, and I was just like, I was very scared, to be honest. Like yeah. I was like, what's gonna happen? How's my life's gonna change? Yeah. And then I can't imagine not only like a family member dying, but like you having to take over 2 kids that are in probably the worst shape that you've ever seen a kid in your life.
Yeah. And one of them really could not communicate. I mean, he said he was 3 and he said maybe 1 or 2 words in his sentences. So you just didn't know, he wasn't pronouncing the words correctly. So you didn't know what he wanted or what he was saying or, and so there was that challenge. So we had to do speech therapy and grief therapy and counseling and, dentists, they probably filled 8 cavities a piece. We have an amazing pediatric dentist that we go to. And so it was just appointment after appointment, and it was a lot.
So what's the biggest thing that you learned during all of that?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it happened so fast that my husband and I, we never even sat down and were like, are we going to do this? We just did it. And so if I were to learn anything, I'd go back and I wish we could have just communicated through that. And we have a great, strong marriage, and my husband was like more hands-on and changed more diapers maybe than I do or did. So we were very thankful to have such a great relationship, and we teased because I told them I didn't want kids till we've been married for 5 years. We both come from divorced families, and that was really important to me, is to create that foundation before we started thinking about kids. And he's like, I want 5 right out the gate. Let's go. I'm like, no, let's just wait. Well, joke's on me, because here we are.
Whether you wanted them or not.
So, after setting those boundaries and foundation, I think I just learned that it's faith, obviously, first and foremost. We're very strong in our faith, and leaning on God during those times was something that got us through, but then also leaning on each other and having that great relationship in marriage that we had created in those first 5 years that was, I would say, extremely beneficial.
Did you ever at any point want to throw in the towel in either that situation or, let's say, because we talked about right before you started real estate or went full time, you had closed 2 deals, and then, but I'm sure, and I want to get into pretty much 3 years is a very short time, but there's got to be a time where you felt like this is kind of where I took the next, and I took it to the next level. So in either, like, have you've had, if anybody has had any adversity, it's been somebody like you. So at any point, like, what is it that keeps you going to say, I can't quit?
I think my friends and family will always say I have such a strong work ethic, and I don't take that lightly. I genuinely love to work. I can count on one hand in my 20 years I've been working, maybe longer, 25, I don't know. I've missed work. Maybe I was either in the hospital or giving birth. Like, I just love to work. If I commit to something, I'm going to do it. And my husband will say, you need to like slow down or calm down. I'm like, I can't. It's literally my DNA. I don't know. There's just something about it. I'm passionate about it, and I love it, and I commit, and I go hard, and I don't stop.
So there hasn't been a time that you felt like, man, like quitting pretty much.
Yeah, I think during that year after we got the boys and I was pregnant, and then once we had, our first girl, there was a part of me that was so selfish where I was just like, I just want to enjoy my newborn baby. And, I had to go back to work after 8 weeks. And, at that point, the boys were just slowly progressing and it just seemed like a lot. It was heavy. And I was like, you know what? Can we just give them back?
Yeah.
And, again, that's so selfish to admit. And we're part of a foster and adopted family ministry at our church. And I'm very honest about it, because if I'm feeling this way, there's got to be other people that are feeling this way, because it is just challenging. It's so much to navigate when you're working full time and you're a new mom and you're a mom to kids that may not like you at the time. And it's just emotional. And so during that first year, I was ready to just be like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore, just because there's so many moving parts medically and from a court, system. But once we kind of got over that hump, I feel like I could breathe a little bit, then it got a lot better.
It's so good that you're transparent about that, though, because like I said, going back to looking at a top producer or somebody that's doing something really nice out of their heart or whatever, we as humans always like to frame the situation, right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, if I say the word car salesman, what's the first thing that comes to your mind or somebody's mind? And it's whatever they experience that they have that brings those memories, and they think of, either somebody that's like sleazy or like a hardworking person because of their experience. But
that's
when
right.
it comes to, like I said, a top performer or somebody that has taken on that challenge, the automatic or the automatic frame that you put, it's not like, I bet this person wanted to give up 10 times and, when before they got to where they're at. And people don't really think about that. And I think people need to be reminded of that.
Yeah, you don't talk about the ugly too much. And that's like social media. You only post the fun,
100%.
Jolly times. And in reality, there was a lot of adversity to get to that.
Even something as simple as like, one of the things that I started doing this year is as soon as I wake up, I go to my back porch and I get on a cold in the cold plunge. And, people are like, I don't know how you can do that. And I'm like, I don't either. But I know that it's something hard to start my day.
Yeah.
That's going to make everything else super easy. But the times that I've posted it on my story, like, people don't see that I'm literally trying to talk myself out of doing it for like at least a solid 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
They don't see that.
I would be the same way. I am so cold natured. I would never get in that.
I am too.
My husband loves those cold plunges.
I walk in here and it's like 74 and I'm like, can we turn that up a little bit? I'm being dead serious. So, a lot of the times people think of something like, let's say, winning the lottery. Like, you have to be very, very fortunate to be able to fit into this number of like one in however many people have a ticket and who's going to win. There's also, on the other side of the coin on that, people can, it might be something like not the lottery. In your case, you shared with me a little bit about how only 1 in a million have this thing that you have. And I want you to share a little bit about that. And I'm curious on when you found that out. Was it before, I'm sure it was way before real estate, but was it before you had the surprise of 2 new kids plus a newborn? Like, tell me a little bit about that.
So I actually was born with it. It's a really rare skin disorder. And you probably wouldn't know I had it unless you just looked really hard or you shook my hand and you're like, oh, her hand's so. So I was born in this colloidal membrane. Everybody thought I was going to die, and they life flighted me. My parents were at school at OSU. My dad was getting his master's there, and my mom was a nurse. And when I was born, so once they figured out what is happening with her, they life flighted me into Tulsa, and had a dermatologist finally come in after 10 days and diagnosed me with, it's called lamellar ichthyosis, super fancy word, of just a dry skin disorder. At the time, they didn't know if it was life or death, but once they figured out what it was, it's treatable, but you do have it your whole entire life. It presents its challenges. So I cannot sweat, like can't perspire at all. So you just get really hot and potentially pass out.
So you've never in your life have...
No. I don't even know what it feels like.
I've met a couple of people that happens to. And what's funny is that one guy that I met him in high school when I wrestled. And I don't know how much you know about wrestling, but one of the things is you have to cut weight.
Yes.
So one time I went from like weighing like 154 pounds down to 132. Wow. And it was all water weight. Mm-hmm. So I remember this guy, how I met him, I said, how much weight are you cutting? And he goes, none. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, I can't. And I go, wait, Paul, I was so confused. And I don't know exactly what his thing was.
Yeah.
I mean, I meeting you, like you said, I would have never assumed like, oh, this person has something with them, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with him. So
I wear a lot of lotion. I have a special lotion I have to put on every day.
Really?
Yeah.
So with him though, he was just like, yeah, I can't sweat. And then I found that like, I'm like, is that even like, how do you live? Like, but also, I mean, there's always
benefits. You don't have to wear deodorant, I guess.
Yeah. Or you're never going to have like sweaty pits, right?
Yeah.
So that's crazy. I didn't know that about that.
So, it has challenges when you're trying to run and it's 95 degrees outside.
Talk to me about that. Like, how
pass out.
So if I'm running in 95 degree weather, even though I'm sweating, I'm hot.
You're hot. It's hot.
So hot.
I'm beet red as a tomato. And I did CrossFit for a long time. And I'm always like, got to, be the one that set my weights up by the fan. And it's challenging. You have to be really careful. I was running around La Fortune many moons ago, and it was so hot. Once you get on La Fortune, you can't get off La Fortune until you get to your car. And it was a stupid decision, but I was basically like crawling to the car by the time I got there. And this was like before cell phones. So it wasn't like I just call, whatever.
Oh my gosh.
So it is challenging. Or if my kids play competitive soccer, so I live at the soccer fields. And I'm always the one with the umbrella and the fan and the water and all the things. But
I would definitely want to take your equipment after you got done working out in the CrossFit workout, though.
Because you have to wipe it down.
Nobody wants my equipment. It's pretty bad.
Soaking wet.
Yeah. But so what's been the hardest thing with that, like throughout your whole life?
Well, so in, elementary, you get bullied because it's more manageable now. I've learned a special lotion that I have to put on every day. And, you can't like go to the ocean and swim in the salt sea, because it's just burns you. But, after that, you kind of get a rhythm of how to manage it and maintain it. But, in elementary and middle school, you get made fun of because you're the weirdo wearing socks with sandals, which now it's cool. I'm like, so that would have been great back in 1995.
There we go.
And it just gives you that mindset of like, there's rude people out there. They're always going to be rude to you. And if you just stay positive and just keep your mindset on what you're doing and ignore, all the negativity. And then I have some really great friends that I embraced in high school that, they would go to bat for me if someone ever.
That's awesome. It's funny you're saying that because I had the girl that owns Hobbs Metzbaugh, Alyssa Hobbs. And as I'm talking with her and we're talking and I'm looking at her hair like I'm talking to you, and then she tells me that, one of the challenges that she had is that when she was, I think in elementary, she had got alopecia. So she's like, actually, like, this is not my hair.
Oh, wow.
And then I'm like, what? Like, but it's crazy because she's so confident and has done some great things. And she was telling me the same thing because I go, that would be one of the worst things to have, like going into high school, because it was going into her freshman year whenever she finally, and then she said it was my friends. If it wouldn't have been for my friends, like it would have been super hard. So that just shows how you're not only the people that you surround yourself with, but it's so important to surround yourself with people that are going to not only push you, but are going to be there for you when you need it. So
I tell my kids they're the sum of the 5 people that they surround themselves with.
And you I did that right away when you got into real estate, because I remember you telling me that you took out top performers out to coffee just to kind of pick their brain and see like, hey, is this somebody that maybe I could, hang around with and learn from, right? So tell me how relationships not only have brought you business, because of course this is really like a people business rather than like selling homes, but how did relationships help you get to where you're at right now in your career? And I'm talking about coworkers or even just family, but or brokers or whatever. Like, who are your core people that you're like, I don't think that I could have done this without them?
Yeah. So I interviewed several brokerages, and once I interviewed with McGraw, I was like, where do I sign? Because this is awesome. They were just so family friendly and so supportive, and I just felt like they were my people,
Yeah.
And I think that's the same when you're wedding dress shopping or house shopping. You just get that feeling, and I got that feeling that like this is the one. And so I just surrounded myself with the broker and the brokerage at the time, and met with every agent I could get my hands on to say, teach me all your ways, and just really dove in. And then once I had that network at McGraw, then I extended beyond that and thought, okay, what electricians can I meet? What financial people can I meet? What vendors, what title people, and just reached out to all of my sphere and influence, and just networked like you've never seen it before. I had so much coffee that first year that I was about to explode. But that's, people ask, what's your key to success? I don't know that I really have a set formula, but there's 2 words that I live by, and it's network and communicate. And if you can do those 2 things in any business, you can be successful.
I completely agree, especially with communicate. And it seems so simple, but it really is so hard for a lot of people, even communicating the basic stuff. So I met with somebody this week, and they were talking to me about a team member that they had, and they said this person is like the best networker out there, but it's not turning into business. And I said, what? Like, why do you think that is? I've never met this other person. And she says, I don't know, but she's at every networking thing, which I know you are. I know that we've had this conversation before, and you give a lot of credit of where you're getting your business from because of that. So what do you think the key is to network and then be able to turn that into business?
That's a great question. I think just being a kind person. You can be networking and being at all of these events and everything, but if you're presenting yourself in a way to where people aren't perceiving you well, I think that's part of it. Like, you do have to be kind, be helpful, be engaging. And then, on the other side of it, if it's networking in the sense of like you're trying to find business, you actually have to ask for the referral. Like, a lot of people don't just say, how can we work together? Can we, how can I help you? How can I serve you? Can I send you, what's your, ideal client, or what are you looking for? And I think once people realize that you're actually genuinely wanting to help them grow their business, because I was in a networking group when I first started, and it was a huge success for me to be a part of. And it really jump-started me into real estate. And I learned that really quickly of like, hey, I've got an electrician, or I've got a finance guy, or whoever it is. And just passing those referrals back and forth to each other has been a tremendous success.
I think the number 2 is big, because I think it's easy to network, but it's uncomfortable to ask people for help. But I just got done reading this book called Beginner's Pluck, and one chapter really stood out to me because it talked about how it's been scientifically proven that when you ask people for help, which that's really what you're doing when you're asking for business, that even somebody that doesn't really like you is more likely to want to help you again.
Wow.
But it's uncomfortable, because as humans, we don't like rejection. And we just assume that we're going to get rejected.
Especially in sales.
Exactly.
You wake up every day unemployed.
And people, because the first thing that you said I agree with, but I think it's a lot harder to find somebody that's asking for business, or even a meeting, like a one-on-one outside of that event, than finding somebody that's going to be really rude, right? Because a lot of the times, if you're meeting these people for the first time, they're going to put their best self out there.
I agree.
So I think the number 2, which a lot of the times would you say that you straight and go ask for business, or do you say like, hey, I would love to do, I mean, it sounds like you ask for a meeting before to really get to know that person, and then you ask for the help. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's usually, how as long as you feel like that connection is genuine. Now, I try to match make if I'm referring someone. And if I think, okay, if this client's going to work great with this vendor because their personalities align, or they're, something in their past, I feel like they would get along or have that connection. I definitely try to match make.
Yeah.
My friends, they used to tease me. I would try to match make.
Oh, really?
In high school or
I think
college.
I tried that. I think
terrible.
I tried that too, but yeah, I wasn't very good at it.
But I do try to match make in business, and it's
been working a lot better.
Yeah.
So this podcast is not necessarily like a full real estate podcast, but the reason why I thought that you would be great to come on is because I love hearing people's stories of the things that they've overcame to get to where they're at. And I'm curious for anybody listening out there, whether they're in real estate, whether they're in whatever types of sales, or maybe they work for a church or whatever it is, there's always a breakthrough point, right? And it seems like you've had that with the year that you had last year. So in the last 3 years, what was that breakthrough point for you, and what do you think got you there?
Great question. So yeah, licensed 6 years. The first 3 was working full time. So I was just kind of, along for the ride. And then that first year when I quit my job and I sold $3.5 million in a half a year, I was like, okay, well, if I can do 3.5 in a half a year, then maybe I can do 7 the next year. And then I think the year after that I did 10. Then I was like, well, I might as well just keep going. So then the next year I think I did 12. And then that's when, almost 15 arrived last year. And, I think the breakthrough was probably last year, because a couple, negative chatters were like, well, you're only successful because it was 2020 or it was 2021 or it was COVID or it was this or that. And I'm like, well.
Were those people closing the same amount as you were?
I don't even know that those people were real estate agents. They may have just been like, outsiders that don't really understand the business. And
people hate winners, and they're going to find an excuse for anything. That I remember being at the mastermind that I told you that I was at in March, and I was talking to a guy, and he had talked about, this was 2022, and he had talked about what he was doing for his business, and he goes, man, but this really has helped me. He goes, last year, just in mortgages alone, I did over $1 million. Wow. And then we kept talking, and then walks off, and the guy that he was talking to us, immediately he goes, well, of course he did $1 million. It was 2021. And I said, how much did you make last year? And he goes, he just looked at me like, and I was like, you don't have to tell me, but I was like, I'm very impressed with this guy, because there's success is not easy, but people want to make it seem easy just to make themselves better about themselves, right? Because it's crazy. You had an even better year, which in my opinion, 2023 was a way worse year than the shift that we had from 2021 to 2022. And I mean, I would say that 12 and 15, somewhat similar. Great that you had a higher year. So the breakthrough year was year 2. I mean, going from 3 million to 12, that's huge. What happened during that year?
Well, I was able to work at real estate full time. So that's the key, is that you can't do this as a side gig. You can't do it on nights and weekends. You can't do it in the summer as a school teacher. Like, you really have to dive in and just do it full time. And once I realized that that's what I needed to do, is to shift my attention. I've always had multiple jobs at a time. Even in college, I paid my way through college, working as a bev cart girl, bartending, waitressing, all the things, cleaning houses. I mean, anything I could do to just graduate with 0 debt, I was doing it. And then I owned a photography business and was a wedding photographer for 10 years while I was at the orthodontic office. So I've always just liked to do multiple things. And that breakthrough year in 2021, which was my first full time with no other job, I was like, oh, okay, if I can focus on one thing and just do that one entity that I love, and it captures all my time and attention, then I think I can just power through.
And actually working at it, right? Not just saying like, I'm a full-time agent, and then be like, all right, well, I don't have any appointments for the rest of the week and it's Tuesday, I can go to Florida this week or something, right?
Yeah.
That's so good. And I remember you telling me that as well. And it makes me think of We work with a lot of buyers, and we get to see, their finance stuff to where I would say at 8 out of 10 people, there's going to be some type of student debt on there. And which a huge myth actually out there is that holds a lot of people back from home ownership, is because they think, I have, so much student debt. I mean, we've seen the most student debt that I've seen has been like over 200,000. It was a doctor, but still, like, what's the ROI on that? Like, how sure you're going to be, in 10 years, you're going to be making 400,000, but like, how long, that's a whole nother conversation. But that keeps a lot of people from thinking that they can't buy a house because they don't really know how it works. But not only that, but even if you do end up buying a house and you have student debt, it's the only type of debt that you cannot get rid of with the bankruptcy. You can't, it goes with you until you die. Yeah. And you were able to do it debt free because of all these, like, what made you be different from your friends that were like, I'm just going to sign up to go to wherever, and I'm just, what made you think like that?
There was a couple contributing factors. My parents didn't really teach me a whole lot about finances, and I was pretty passionate about it. I have a marketing major and finance minor, and so once I was developing those skills of learning about debt and finances and building credit as an 18-year-old and all these things, I went down to the bank, a local bank where I grew up in Claremore, and asked for a little loan to buy a laptop because I needed some credit. And my parents hadn't even filed taxes, so I couldn't fill out the FAFSA to even remotely try to get any kind of help. And they were middle class, so I don't know that I would have qualified anyways. And so once I was like, okay, well, I don't want to take out a bunch of loans because I want to buy a house, when I graduate. And at the time I didn't know about, that you could potentially buy a house. And I just didn't want the debt, and I didn't want the burden. And so just started working doubles and waiting tables and bartending. And every semester I would pay off the next semester and just keep going. And
that's incredible.
I lost out on, some social, and wasn't able to like join a sorority or anything. But looking back, I'm like, I wouldn't have changed it.
That's incredible. Well, if there's anybody out there that has WillPower, it's you. I mean, you have endured a lot, and I just can't wait to see you succeed in whatever you're doing, because I know that whatever you put your mind to, you're going to succeed. So anybody listening that is maybe on the verge of thinking like, maybe I'm not in the right profession, whether it's real estate, whether it's whatever they're doing, or maybe they're just in a tough season that they're ready to throw in the towel. What advice do you have for them? Like, what's something that has kept you just truly like going?
Well, my why, everyone talks about your why. It sounds so cliche. And obviously my why is my family, my husband, my children, and, wanting to provide for them, and just, powering through that. But then also just finding what you're passionate about. And I think if you find that, then it doesn't feel like work. My grandfather was an architect, and he would skip off to work because he just loved it. It was not work to him. And so do what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life kind of mentality. And so creating those goals and finding that passion, and I think the rest of it will unfold.
I love it. And one of the things that I heard a long time ago was that cliches are only cliches is because people don't implement. So majority of people that hate their job, they hear it like, if you do what you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life. They're like, yeah, right. Now let me go clock in. I got to go back to work. And it's like, well, why, instead of like making that a cliche, why don't you try to find something that, I mean, we live in a world now where technology is like the best we've ever seen, to where there's a way for you to find something to where you're making the same or close to the same and doing something that you actually enjoy, because life is really, really short. And we spend a lot of time trying to make money to be able to provide for ourselves and our families. So why would you just want to spend, I mean, just in the car alone, I'm all about numbers and stats. And the other day, somebody asked me, they said, what kind of music do you listen to? And I said, that's funny you asked me that, because when I'm in the car by myself, I don't really ever listen to music. I just listen to podcasts or Audible. And they're like, that's crazy. Like, why?
And I said, well, because that's not adding anything to my life. I said, and I was like, just think about how much time you spend in the car. And I looked it up, and it was the equivalent of 5 years of your life that the car takes away from you. That's just the car.
Wild.
So imagine how much time you're spending at a job that you might not like. Why would you want to do that? So it was not a cliche, but only to the people that are going to implement. Rachel, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you. Guys, Rachel Close, where can people find you if they want to get in contact with you?
So Instagram, Rachel Contract to Close.
Contract to Close. Oh, I love that last name.
Thanks. Shout out to my husband for his last name.
There we go. I love it. Well, I'm super excited to have you back on the Real Deal podcast later down if you're down.
I'm down. I'd love to talk about investing next time. We didn't really talk about that. My husband does flip houses and Airbnbs, and we're really passionate about that. So let's do part 2.
Let's do it. And on the About Me, it says like, it's not a real estate podcast, even though I'm a loan officer, but I mean, I meet with so many agents and I'm like, there's so many cool stories out there. But thank you so much for coming on, Rachel. I appreciate you.
It was so fun. Appreciate it.